Hey guys, it's Q&A Tuesday. So, the hat. It is a Stetson, and it is also a calorie hat. In one of the previous episodes, I mentioned to you guys that a veteran whom I gave a Rolex watch away to a year ago, after finishing his last deployment to the Middle East, has retired from the U.S. Army, and he said that the first chance I get to come see you, he did. Now, when I did the video, I mentioned to you that he's a very private individual for various reasons, so I'm not going to disclose where he lives, but he drove about 8 hours to come see me, and he felt that this was the perfect gift for me because I am ex-cavalry. I was a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout, so therefore you see the swords and you see the rank of sergeant. He overdid it a little bit. I was not a sergeant. I left the military as a specialist or a corporal, so one too many bars underneath this one. But this was a very thoughtful and a very, very cool gift. Why am I showing you this hat? Because I'm going to do a little mail time before I get into a couple of questions from you guys. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. The mail's here. And this is a very special mail time because it comes from two of my fans that I know you guys are watching this. And what's so special about it? Well, one of the things I got in the mail was a police badge by a gentleman by the name of Cory. When he was a beat cop, as they call it, this is his old badge, and he decided to give it to me for various reasons. And he writes, Roman, I hope this message finds you and your loved ones doing well. I'm the gentleman that sent you the video about the JLC watch that is important to me, and also emailed you about an AP Royal Oak bracelet link. I've included my shield from my first job out of the police academy, along with a patch sticker from my current employer, where I am a sergeant, and this gentleman now works for the Sheriff's Department. This gentleman is actually local. He's from Pennsylvania. Thank you for supporting first responders. Thank you for your service to our country. My nano was also from another country, Italy, and served in our nation's army during World War II. A fact that he was very proud of, and a lesson that didn't fall on deaf ears. He taught me that being a true American has nothing to do about birthright and everything to do about conduct. You're a shining example. All the best, Sergeant Cory. Cory, thank you very much. Obviously, I already saw this before taping this, and I got goosebumps when I got this. I will proudly display this in my office, probably going to come up with some kind of a cool stand for this, and I'm going to put this sticker on my car. Another thing I got in the mail is from another officer who's actually a police chief. Again, I'm going to cover some things for privacy reasons because I don't want to put anyone out there. So I'm going to cover the badge number. This is a NYPD badge that I received from the gentleman by the name of Al, who is no longer with NYPD. He's had a long, successful career, made it all the way up to police chief. And he also sent me a couple of coins. This will go alongside with the other coins that I hold to my left, and I will hold this near and dear to my heart. He sent me an email asking me for a watch. A lot of you guys know when you send me an email, I tend to find out who you are, what your story is, and often we'll get into conversation, even get on the phone. In one of the emails, he found out that I was in New York during 9/11, and so was he. Of course, he was there in a much greater capacity. I'm going to read a small paragraph out of this email. On that day, me and my team made it up to the 51st floor of North Tower before we were thrown down the stairs by what we later learned was the South Tower collapsing and smashing into us. We tried to make it up to the 86th floor where we believed the first plane had hit in an effort to rescue as many people as we could. Unfortunately, we could go no further and worked our way down, clearing the floors of any people that stayed behind. When we got downstairs, as you know, by the memories you must have, we realized the world has changed forever. Everything was gone. I remember vividly looking out from the now destroyed and windowless building, seeing emergency vehicles damaged and on fire. We collected as many survivors and worked with the fire department and the ESU in an effort to get everyone to safety. Unfortunately, every time we tried to leave the facility, we were met with the loss of those that had no choice but to jump. As they crashed around us, we serpented across the concourse, with the most of us making it. As you may remember, shortly thereafter, the North Tower came down, falling on us with thunderous roar like a freight train. Much like today, it was surreal. Although we were buried in the rubble, my team and I survived by the grace of God. A sizable portion of the North Tower fell to the south, ultimately reducing the debris that came down on us. Unfortunately, along with many others, we lost Team 2, consisting of Harry, Mitch, and Tommy. They were talking to us before the portion of the North Tower fell to the south and what was left of the South Tower. Obviously, a very emotional topic that seem to have happened a lifetime ago. And I told you guys in the past, I never try to get political on my channel or share any kind of political views, make you preview what my political views are. But one thing that's happening in our wonderful country today has gotten me to a point where I feel like I should share my thoughts and feelings on this. Again, without trying to get too political, I spoke on the phone both with Sergeant Cory and Chief Al. We talked about what's going on today in regards to how police are being viewed post the infamous incident that happened not too long ago. You guys know what I'm talking about. And it makes me mad and sad. You know, I feel that we live in a country where our media has unnecessary power to control the herd, for the lack of a better word, where all day, every day, the media pumps out such nonsense that people are brainwashed by it, and all of a sudden they quickly forget what a police officer or a police force means to a small town, a big town, a state, or our country as a whole. For all you guys out there screaming F the police and defund the police and things of that nature, I'm gonna tell you how I feel that I think it's absolutely fucking stupid. I'm not here to defend anybody. I'm not here to tell you who was wrong or who was right. I am gonna tell you that, look, nobody deserves to die. What happened was indeed terrible. But I will tell you about this little thing called outliers, right? And in any group of individual, any organization, be it a police force, there's always outliers. There's always what we call bad apples. One should never judge an entire organization based on that. And you guys watching are part of the anti-police movement that's going on today. And I'm going to tell you, you need to stop. You need to regroup and you need to think about what you're saying. You need to think about whom you are talking about. You're talking about everyday heroes. You're talking about guys that leave their house every morning, they kiss their wife and children goodbye, and knowing that there's a chance they may not be coming back home because some punk decides to shoot them back, responding to a routine call. You're talking about guys that were there on 9/11. Have we forgotten all the images from 9/11 and how deeply involved the police was and the fire department was and how many lives were lost? What happened to everyone in this country, regardless of what state you were in, even across the world, wearing NYPD hats or the New York Fire Department hats? Did we all forget that, or is it because the media is no longer covering that, and right now they have something else to cover to boost up their ratings? And literally, I feel like sometimes poison the general public with a lot of misinformation. I'm not going to get into talking about police brutality. I just said there are bad apples in any given organization. The larger that organization is, the more chance of bad apples appearing, so to speak. I will tell you this. I read an article somewhere, I don't remember which town it was, and they started the plan of defunding the police. And one of the things they said they're going to cut out is responding to certain incidents, right? They're going to continue responding to super violent crimes and things like that. But one of those things was domestic violence. Are these people out of their minds? Domestic violence means that you can have kids getting beat up at home, and now you're going to defund the police so they're not going to respond to that. I mean, this is just the kind of example that's happened in our country, and I honestly can't believe my eyes and I can't believe my ears. I don't watch the news for that very, very reason. But I wanted to tell you how I feel on the issue. The boys in blue are the most essential and one of the most important part of our community and our way of life. These are the guys that myself, my family, my town, my country depend on day in and day out in case something happened. You want to defund them, you want to insult them, you want to tie their hands behind their back so they cannot do their job. You know, it's funny, I talked to both of these guys and I said, well, you guys are technically a union. What happens if you all went on strike? You guys really want that? You really want the cops to go on strike? Who are you going to call when shit hits the fan?
We got one!
I felt like I needed to get that out there. This is how I feel about this. And I just wanted to tell for those of you that believe in a lot of the stuff that the media is spitting out at you to kind of wake up and remember who these guys are and what some of these guys have gone through in order to protect our way of life. Chief Al survived by sheer will of God, as he put in his email. He was the guy running up and down those floors in that tower literally minutes before it fell. He ended up saving a lot of lives and by chance survived, where some of his comrades did not. Is this the guy you want to hold up F the police sign in front of? You have to put things in perspective and sort of wake up and smell the coffee. I support the boys in blue. I support guys like Al. I support guys like Cory and the thousands and thousands of police officers out there risking their necks and protecting my way of life as well as yours. But anyway, guys, again, I'm obviously going to cherish these gifts for a very, very long time. and proudly display them in my office, and certainly tell your stories for those that ask why I have 2 police badges sitting on top of my credenza. I know I've taken up some time with this, but I felt this was an important message. I will get a couple of questions in there because, again, this is a Q&A Tuesday. So Zach asks, hey Roman, I was watching a review of the new Tudor Black Bay 58 when my wife asked how much do they cost. I didn't know the MSRP, but I guess around $35,000-$40,000, which she followed up with asking why do Rolex watches cost so much more? My first reaction was to bring up ETA movements, but I couldn't for obvious reasons. On top of that, the Tudor watches have the 70-hour power reserve, which beats the current Submariners. So I basically was left with the 904 great steel and arguably better bracelets, but the most valid point I could make was that Rolex watches cost more simply because people are willing to pay more, and that's it. So my question to you, what would your response be? Why do Rolex watches cost over twice as much as Tudor? And secondly, what do you estimate the manufacturer cost difference are between Tudor Black Bay 58 and the Rolex 114060? Thanks, Zach. I actually replied to Zach and I asked him what his wife's name was, and he replied to me and said his wife's name was Kristen. And the reason I asked that is because I wanted to give Kristen a shout out, because technically this is your question. So if you're watching this, shout out to you for a great question. Look, we often tend to look at watch manufacturing with our blinders on like a horse, right? We know that, oh, if I'm buying up ETA movements or if I am outsourcing tourbillons to another company, this is the cost behind there. Cost of gold, cost of production, cost of creating certain parts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? The production cost alone is probably more or less the same between the two watches. What you also have to take into consideration is other costs, right? Sometimes people come to my office and I offer them a watch, let's call it $10,000, and my cost on it is $9,000. And they're like, well, can you do better? Can you do 8? And I'll in turn tell them, look, my cost is actually 9. I'll gladly buy it for 8 from you. I want to make $1,000. Like, well, why do you have to make $1,000? Can you give it to me for $9,200, $9,300? Seems like a reasonable profit. And I quickly tell them, I'm like, well, are you the guy that pays my electric bill? Are you the guy that pays my payroll of almost 30 people at this point, right? Or my salary for that matter. When you're talking about buying or selling of goods, people often overlook the hidden costs, right? And which is why, when I buy a watch for $9 grand, I want to sell it to somebody for 10 grand. Am I really making 10 grand? There's a cost to every dollar that I make. It's called overhead. It's a very simple concept. When it comes to cars, when it comes to watches, the things that are usually expensive, right? People tend to think you're not entitled to make a decent profit and oftentimes think you make too much profit. So with that said, it's the hidden cost that people tend to overlook. So if you're saying, wait a minute, if the production cost is this more or less the same, then why is one so much more expensive than the other? Of course, people willing to pay more for it is kind of a valid point, but what got Rolex there is the question. And I think the hidden cost that you're not seeing behind Rolex versus Tudor is probably things like marketing costs. And then it's also longevity, right? It's how long Tudor been around versus Rolex, right? How much money has been put into Rolex thus far in terms of marketing ambassadors and things of that nature to make them justify that type of price. Well, they use marketing to make them so popular that, as you said, people are willing to pay more for it. I've said it numerous times, Tudor is always going to be in the shadow of Rolex, and Rolex is okay with that. And I'm sure there are kick-ass finance departments that are out there figuring this out down to a penny to saying, look, this is how much we're going to spend on marketing, and this is how I'm going to price my watches. Neither Rolex or Tudor pull these retail prices out of their head. Because remember, they manufacture a watch, a percentage of them goes to dealers at 37% off. Some of them make it into the boutique where they get sold at full retail at the Rolex flagship stores, right? They do their math versus their overhead versus this, and they come up with budgets, right? I do this within my own company, right? I have a marketing budget, I have a logistics budget, believe it or not. Logistics budget, what do you need a logistics budget for? Well, when I start receiving things by the container, when it costs me X amount of money to import stuff in, it costs me X amount of money to run a shipping department, shipping supplies, shipping expenses. Believe me, you don't want to see my monthly FedEx bill. That's why we have the most professional shipping staff in the entire world. So those are the things I take in consideration. I budget based on that. And that's how I come up with my markups. I don't come up with my markers out of my ass, right? I know that I need to make a certain margin on my product in order to be a profitable business, and Rolex does the same thing. Now, I am very, very conscious of competition and when it comes to that as well. So I know I can mark up my stuff, let's say 40% just because I feel like it, because I feel like that's how much I want to make it. Still has to be within reason based on competition that's out there. So I have to keep control of my expenses and make sure that all my stuff is working very, very efficiently so that I can live with a certain average margin, if that makes sense. But for the most part, again, this is all very well calculated by Rolex and Tudor, and they know exactly what their MSRPs need to be within reason. And that reason in this particular case is, again, the fact that Tudor is not Rolex, so they have to be cheaper, right, in order to be enticing to people. If Tudor was priced in line with Rolex today, I don't think they would be as successful. But as time goes by and the more money they pump into marketing and creating some kick-ass models and things of that nature, guess what? They're going to get up there in price, but so will Rolex at the same rate. Rolex will not stop doing what they're doing for Rolex to keep them, you know, number one, where number two is like way down here somewhere, right? So it's always going to be one of those things. I hope it answers your question, Kristen and Zach. Thank you for emailing that over to me. Here's a question from Fred. Hey, Roman, as always, loving the shows. And as always, I am learning. Thank you. This is helpful as I have started my own gray market watch company, just like you did. You have mentioned you started out small and have become a giant in the industry. You are now, if you want to accept it or not, guiding people like me. You are an influence to many, a guide, role model to lots, and a mentor to us few who have now followed in your footsteps. Wow, I'm actually taken back by that. I don't tend to think of myself that way. I just have fun doing these videos, but I'm flattered hearing these type of words. Here's my question. Who have been your mentors, guides, and role models through the various stages of your long, very successful journey from early on, the in-between years, and even today? Never compromise, stay true to who you are. That's why we watch, follow, and share, and recommend you, Gus. P.S. Thanks for validating my prediction of the collapse of Basel World. It's very hard to pinpoint mentors in a career that's spanning almost 20 years, right? And I will tell you that mentors come and mentors go, and I believe in our industry it's more of a segmented process, meaning that you run into people all day, every day that can mentor you, influence you, and help you in many ways, whether they're doing something bad or good, believe it or not. The first mentor I could possibly think of would be the U.S. Army, right, way before I got into the industry. The Army is what taught me discipline. The Army is what taught me how to grow up and take responsibility for my action, knowing that it's whatever it is that I put in is what I will get out. And initially that taught me from a physical fitness standpoint. I was never jog, it was extremely difficult for me, but at the end of the day, I figured out what the reward was, right? Post the Army, I would probably say my wife, right? Once I got married.
This is my wife.
I got a nickname, the Founder. I didn't give it to myself. I'll tell you a quick story why. So, started by myself. 3 years later, I partnered up with my best friend and now business partner, Arthur.
Bowl. It's gonna suck bowl. It's gonna suck bowl.
And a few years down the line, we merged two companies, which was Luxury Bazaar with a company called A&G Jewelers, which were a jewelry wholesaler of 25 years, and we formed one company. When the four of us got together and we moved and we bought this building, we had to make new business cards, right? Which for these. Vlad came over and said, I'm ordering new business cards, you know, what should I put on there? Because now we have 4 business partners. I said, well, just make everybody a business card that says partner, right? And let me tell you something, for those that know me personally, I'm not the modest type, right? So these business cards come in, and I look at my card and it says partner. I'm like, wait a minute. No. Absolutely not. Change my business card to founder and CEO. Of course, my partners got a good crack out of it. Knowing me personally, they didn't take any offense to that and said, absolutely, I don't know what you were thinking to begin with. And that's when the nickname, the Founder, kind of stuck. Arthur, I think, even ordered me a license plate that says the Founder for one of my birthdays. I never put it on my car, I just keep it in my office. But that's where that whole thing is. But in reality, it was my wife who is the founder, and she always says that because if you guys watch the story of how I got started in the business, the gentleman that first came to me and offered me product to put online because I knew computers, for the lack of a better word, or the internet when it was booming. At first it was my wife who said, you know what, Roman, I really have a good feeling about this. I think we should do this. And she helped me out along the way, taking pictures, writing descriptions, answering questions. Because remember, I still held a full-time job. A demanding job at that in New York City, which required me to travel 4 hours a day, work extra hours too, on top of that in the middle of the night. And we had a newborn son. So it was a difficult time. So my wife was that mentor where she taught me the fact that no matter how hard you work or no matter how hard things are, again, what you input, you will get out. And then along the way, notice I said good and bad, I've met a lot of interesting people in this business. Danny Godberg, who is the owner of Godberg Jewelers and Watchbox, right? He was a huge mentor to me. He believed in me when nobody really believed in the internet, right? And by believe, he backed up his belief by extending me credit, which, you know, if, God forbid, I lost everything, I couldn't probably afford to repay him by giving me watches to sell on credit and things of that nature. And many, many other names out there that I could mention, but I'll generalize it by saying that mentors and influencers business will come along on a daily basis based on single transaction with business dealing with people, whether they're good or bad. Those that screwed me in this business, I still consider them mentors, and I'm somewhat thankful because I learned a lesson. Those that help me out in this business is the same thing. You can look for influence and mentorship in this business no matter how long you are in the industry, right? Because you can learn something new every day. And in fact, as I'm becoming older, I look for influence and mentorship to the people that work for me, like Adrian, for example, or my sales manager, Anna, who started with me 15 years ago as a secretary, right? Because again, once you get away from the everyday hustle and bustle, and again, don't get me wrong, I still buy and sell on a daily basis, but not as much as Adrian or Anna or Devin or anybody else for that matter in the sales department. I just tend to, find them as my new mentors. And you would think, wait a minute, these are your employees, they haven't been in the industry as long as you have. It doesn't really matter because this industry is so ever-changing, it's so evolving. By the minute, you can always find influence and mentorship among those that are around you every single hour of the day and every single day of the week. Gus, I hope that sheds a little bit of light into that question, and thank you for your kind words. Here's a good question from John. Hey Roman, I'm on a list for a watch which is admittedly out of my league, but I don't want to use the "but it will retain value" rationalization if it's unwarranted. In your experience, is there a rough price range for modern watch where a loss is almost a guaranteed because there simply aren't enough buyers who can afford it? I know there are exceptions like Philippe IV, but I'm wondering about other modern watchmakers in the $250,000 price range. Thanks as always, John. I've discussed this numerous times, John, where I said, look, you have to ask yourself a question. How many guys do you know that can afford a $250,000 watch simply based on what's in their bank account? Now take that small group of friends and say, how many of the guys that can afford a $250,000 watch are actually willing to spend $250,000 on a watch? Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you're going to run out there and buy yourself a $500,000 Ferrari, right? You may choose to spend it on a rare bottle of wine or vacation home or something of that nature, right? Not everybody's into watches, surprise. The issue with watches in a $250,000 range is there are very, very few exceptions to the rule in regards to those retaining their value. And even still, they become difficult to resell, even though it's a knockout piece. With that said, majority of the watches in the price range that you mentioned will not retain their value. Go online. Take a look at watches that are out there retailing for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 and see what they're selling for online, just to gauge it real quick, right? From personal experience, I'll tell you, the more expensive the watch is, the less it retains value. And it's the why that you want to know based on your question, I'm assuming. And the why is very, very simple. Return on investment over time. So if I am a dealer and I'm buying myself a watch that's $250,000, and I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, this may take me 6 months to sell just due to the nature of the beast, the price. Because again, let's face it, I sell a lot more of $5,000 watches than I do of $500,000 watches. I'm going to tend to want to pay less for it, because when you're talking about retaining value, it's at the time of sale that you need to look at it, right? Not at the time of purchase. If you're looking at a watch at the time of sale and you're saying, wait a minute, I paid $250,000 for it. Let's say original retail was $400,000. What am I going? And now I'm being offered $150,000 for it. Well, there's a reason for that, and the reason for that is, again, if I'm going to go out there, if I'm going to make a 10 to 20% margin, let's call it 20% to beef up the numbers, right? I'm going to offer you $150 to sell it for $180. Now you're saying, well, Roman, that's $30,000 you're making. No, it's not. It's 20% that I'm making. Some guys look at it that way. I stopped looking at it that a long time ago. I look at a percentage. So I'm not making 30 grand on a watch. I'm making 20% on a watch. Well, hold on a second, Roman. 20% is also a little much. Why not 10%? Well, it depends on how long it's going to take me to sell it. My experience, my buyer's experience comes in there, knowing that, look, this is a watch I can flip over right away. This is a popular watch. I already have a client lined up for it, so I can pay $175 and sell it for $180, and I'm happy, right? Technically, not really laying out any money. If you bought it yesterday and sold it today, and I can deal with a small margin. We do that often on popular hot models that people lining up to buy. Believe me, I make the least amount of margins on the most popular stuff. Your 5711s, your Royal Oaks, your Nautiluses, and all those Richard Milles. We don't make a whole lot of money. We make a lot more money on blinder items such as these that are less popular. But it takes more time, so at the end, it all averages out. Right? At the end of the year, I look at my averages, wholesale and retail, and they all average out more or less the same year in, year out. Could have made a $100,000 hit on somebody if it took me 9 months to do it. At the end of the day, it's more or less the same to me. What are the exceptions? For a while, high-end, highly complicated Pateks were all the craze. Your minute repeaters, your tourbillons from Patek that were trading through the roof. Guess what? Post 08, they all took a crap. Right? 5102 Celestials, trading upwards of $300,000. Now they're mid to high 100s, $200,000, depending on metals, right? 5970s, 3939s, the 5013 minute repeaters, the 10-day tourbillon from Paddock. All these things fetch buku numbers, and people were putting money into them thinking it's never going to end, and guess what? It ended. So that's one example that I can put forth. It lasted a while, but nothing lasts forever. I think the only thing that is somewhat close to being an exception is probably vintage stuff. And when I say vintage stuff, I'm talking about stuff that's uber rare, not your run-of-the-mill vintage stuff. I'm talking about stuff that doesn't go up in the market due to a certain hype. Like you saw the 5402s stainless steel, the Royal Oak that I was wearing. I saw it go from $35,000 all the way to $85,000. But there's still a lot of them out there. I'm talking about stuff that's pretty rare. Closing $8, which I discussed in my last What's On My Desk, those things. Things that are one-offs or 10-offs or 5-offs, right? Things that you won't see elsewhere. At the end of the day, if I needed to find 5 5402s at a price today, I could. If I wanted to find a 5208 Rolex closing $8, I couldn't, right? Last one fetched 1.2 million in auction, right? So those are the kind of things that tend to be investment proof. But what happens is you tend to pay an arm and a leg up front for it, meaning all the money. And at the end of the day, still not an easy sell. The gentleman that bought that closing 8 Rolex for $1.2 million, if he needed to sell that tomorrow, he would have to enlist the help of an auction house. He would have to enlist the help of a dealer who specializes in these kind of things. And it still wouldn't be easy to sell, and it would come at a cost, which is why I always say these things are not investments, right? They're investments for me because this is my business. To answer your question, I would probably say 100,000 and above, you're almost guaranteed to take a loss because of the nature of the beast and it being a very high price tag. And some of you guys, I'm sure, are going to comment below, well, what about Richard Milles? You buy Richard Milles, it holds its value. Again, now, it's holding its value, right? Everybody said the same thing about 5102 Paddocks and the 5970 Paddocks, and it lasted many, many, many years until it kind of died down. Something happened, something affected it, financial crisis. For now, I don't foresee Richard Milles going down anytime soon, and I predicted this numerous times, and a lot of you guys, as far back as 2 years ago when I did an episode of Richard Milles, you guys were telling me, oh, this is all temporary, this is going to flop, it's going to burst, it's a bubble. It's not. These watches are popular, they're here to stay for a while. But then we can't predict events such as, a worldwide financial crisis of 2008. We couldn't predict what's happening right now with the coronavirus, even though it didn't affect the watch market, thank God, but it could have, right? And all that talk about collectability and things can still go down the drain. So at the end of the day, remember, these things are not an investment, they're an expensive toy. And based on your question, I can tell you right now, the more expensive something is, you're almost guaranteed to lose money on it when you go to resell it, with the exception of a few outliers. Well, guys, I didn't get to as many questions as I wanted to in a regular Q&A, but I felt that the message that I brought forth in the beginning of this episode is very, very important. It's very important to me. Again, I try not to get political on this channel. I try not to discuss current events or opinions and things of that nature because, look, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I respect everybody's opinion. With everything that's going on in regards to our boys in blue in our wonderful country we call the United States of America, to me, I just feel terrible about it. And having received these gifts from these police officers, I felt like I needed to say something, get that off my chest. I would ask for you not to put any stupid comments below. If you guys feel a certain way about the situation, what's going on, feel free to email me. I'll be happy to talk to you just the same. Other than that, guys, you know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber to my channel. And last but not least, share this video with your friends whom you feel may enjoy this content, because this is what helps my channel grow organically. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday.